What did you think about the change in the DSM with removing Asperger's syndrome and kind of redefining the classification of autism?
I think practically it's not supposed to have an effect, but it has in some ways. To me, the terminology isn't that important. It's like saying, are you blind or are you visually impaired? It's a spectrum. There are people, I have friends who were blind, and I have friends who would be considered visually impaired because they have some eyesight. It's all a spectrum. The problem is I've seen professionals. In one case, I had a client where where the psychologist tried to take away her diagnosis because of it, even though the DSM was clear, you don't lose your diagnosis. And what concerns me would be people who might be previously diagnosed and now lose the diagnosis because of the change.
So they can also just go and get another diagnosis, right?
In theory, you can keep going to a psychologist till someone gives you a diagnosis. I mean, it all depends if a psychologist is going to give you the diagnosis. Or do you mean an autism diagnosis or another diagnosis altogether?
I'm talking specifically about Asperger's. Like, when change happened, the people who were diagnosed with Asperger's before, did they automatically go under the umbrella of autism diagnosis, or did they lose their diagnosis completely?
Well, the DSM said that they were not supposed to lose the diagnosis. They were all supposed to go under the autism diagnosis, and it was changed to like level 1, level 2, level 3. And if I'm correct, level 1 is the highest. I'm looking at now is the highest functioning. So most people, anybody who had the Asperger's diagnosis previously, would in theory fall into level 1 of the autism diagnosis.
And the levels are just related to how much care someone needs. Not functioning level, really.
Well, it is, but it isn't. If I recall correctly, level 1 is the highest functioning, level 2 is a mid-level, and level 2 requires substantial support, level 3 requires very substantial support, and level 1 is anybody requiring minimal to no support.
Right. It just gets tricky. Like, I know a lot of people are against the functioning labels, and they don't like being called high functioning or low functioning. But switching to this, it is kind of the same thing, like you're saying. It's just calling it something different.
We all have things that we're good at functioning and bad at functioning. We all have strengths and weaknesses. I'm not very good athletically. I'm clumsy and I'm out of shape, and I'm not a good athlete. You wouldn't call me a low functioning athlete. It's just that my ability. We all have things that we're high or low functioning at. It's to me redefining the paradigm of what's normal, because everybody talks about it in the concept of normal, but there really is no such thing as normal. I always say, I ask when I give lectures on self-advocacy and special education, which obviously is what I do professionally, to define normal, and nobody can define normal in terms of human behavior or human interaction. There is no normal. You can have a normal heart rate. You can have a normal pulse. You can have normal kidney function, but in terms of behavior, there is no normal.
Yeah, and I guess because society kind of defines those norms.
Right. We've decided certain things that are norms in society of what is and is not normal today.
Right, and it can change, exactly.
Things that were normal 100 years ago are not normal today, and there are things today that are normal that are not normal 100 years ago. Society changes on our predefined norms of what we accept as normal. 100 years ago, it was not normal for women to go to work. Now it is. And we're better for it. 100 years ago, it was not normal for, women to vote, or they just got the vote. Now it's women vote in higher rates than men. I'm using simplistic examples that I can think of off the top of my head, but norms change.
Right. Yeah.
200 years ago in this country, slavery was normal, and we look back at that and say, how could that be normal today?
Right.
I think that's a great example of the norms of society changing.
So what do you wish neurotypical people knew about autism? We've talked about the misconceptions.
In part, I'll almost say that I think that I wonder if there is such a thing as neurotypical, because neurology is so unique, and neurology is so one of a kind. I wish people understood that, like everyone else, people on the spectrum or autistic people are just looking for connection, looking for friendships, looking for meaningful relationships, looking for that same social connection that everyone else is, looking for romance, looking for love, looking for sex, looking for the same things everyone else is. Meaningful human connection, friendships, like I said, romantic relationships, just to be accepted in society.
Mm. What do you wish autistic people would understand of neurotypicals?
That sometimes there are things that you can't do just because you're autistic, that there are some times when you're going to have to conform to society. And I always use the example, there are autistic people I've seen at events who go around touching people. You can't go around on the street touching people. You can't go around hitting people because you don't like that. You can't go around naked on the streets because you don't feel clothes are comfortable. There are certain norms of society we all have to accept as living in society.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something we all accept as part of what I call the social contract.
How does autism impact your life today?
Well, I think sometimes socially, I might say something that comes off the wrong way, although not much less than I used to. I get very anxious and I have very high anxiety, even with medication. I still have a large problem with anxiety. And when people I care about are upset with me, it can eat at me. And so that's something where I have a lot of, as I said, a lot of anxiety that will manifest itself internally, even if not externally, even if I can.
You've been watching Autism Knows No Borders. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Also, we'd love to hear from you, so let us know what you think in the comments section. Click here to watch this interview in its entirety. You can also find us on your favorite podcast app. Tune in each week for engaging conversations of how people across the globe are inspiring change and building community. Thanks for watching. Take care.